the various circles of time, even if they were popular and powerful people. If you remember the story of the centurion, I mean, this is somebody who would have been powerful, and Jesus said, "Come here, let's talk." But often looking towards those who were considered least, who were considered other. So throughout our series, we've listened to the voices of a Jewish rabbi. We've listened to the voice of an imam. We've listened to voices of the fatherless. We've highlighted other voices of different groups and peoples. And this Sunday, we're highlighting one of our very own, Miss Morry McGahee. Oh, her name's up later. That's the psalm. We'll get there. Morry's been a member of this church since 1968, and for the last several years has been sort of bound to home. Often the voices of elderly folks are discounted and dismissed and not heard loudly culturally. So we're going to raise that voice to the surface today. Now, usually we have our guest come and be with us, but as you just heard, Morry is homebound, and so she's not able to be with us here in the flesh. But I was able to interview her this week, and I was able to invite her dear friend, Nancy Gard. Would you come up, Nancy? Who's known, can we borrow that mic? Who's known, well, you can tell me how long you've known Morry McGahee and your relationship to her.
I've known Morry and her husband Aaron ever since they came to the church. They had just come to town. First Pres was the first church they decided to visit. And when they visited and sat towards the back of the sanctuary, of course, Jenny Long went up to greet her with her wonderful smile. And that did it. That simple act of grace and love made the decision for Morry and Aaron to join our church. This was unusual. They're African American. And we were on the peninsula, and we were an old church. Even then, we were an old church. So I think about Morry and Aaron and their wonderful smile. They were greeters on Sunday morning. My sons still remember them and their smile when we would come into church. Such a simple act of love that we take for granted. But sometimes that smile is what God is using to bring his people in. And Morry, I'm thankful for you and Aaron and your smile.
Okay, I have a little, I'm going to take us a little sideways here. You know, we like to pivot, we like to get interesting.
Good.
So I'm gonna read two of Morry's favorite verses, and then Morry always watches on Zoom, so I'm gonna tell her out loud. I'm gonna call you just so you can say hello to everybody. So hopefully Morry answers, because I did not prep her for this, that I would call her. But we're just gonna see what happens. But first, I'm gonna give Morry a moment to get near her phone, because she's watching us on Zoom right now, and just read a couple of Morry's favorite verses that we're gonna unpack together as we attempt to listen to voices that aren't usually centered. So this is Psalm 118:24. It says, you've probably heard this one. This is the day that the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. Some of you even have this, well, you could read it on the screen. I'm like, oh, you have it memorized. I'm so proud. It's up there, isn't it? Okay. All right. And then another brief but favorite verse of hers. Let's all just read it together. Be still and know that I am God. What a challenging verse in this day and age, to be still and know that I am God. So I'm gonna pick up my little, oh, it's in my hand, y'all. I'm gonna pick up my phone right here and see if I can call Miss Morry, and if she'll just, Morry, if you're watching, I'm not gonna embarrass you or anything. I just want you to say hi, everybody, so people know you're a real live human being, and we're not just making this up. Oh, and it was just more. Thank you for reminding us. It was just Morry's.
Yes, it is.
Oh, there she is. Can you hear her? Okay, Morry, say hi to everybody.
Hello, everyone.
Everybody says hello. This is the. Go ahead. What is it, Morry?
Peace.
Peace. Oh, she says peace. Peace to you all. Well, Morry, I'm going to share some of your words here, and I just want you to be real real vigorous with me after this worship service if I've gotten any parts wrong, okay?
Okay.
All right, so I'll give you a call after church today, and you let me know how many apologies I need to make next week, all right?
All right.
All right, thanks, Morry. We're going to talk a little bit more. Glad you're on Zoom with us. Bye now. Oh, good. See, she's real. I told you.
You know, Morry always has that wonderful voice of welcoming. I called her within the last week. Thank goodness for caller ID because she knew who was calling her. And when I said hello, she said, "Hi, Nancy." Just, like we were just right across from each other.
Morry is one of the most contagiously joyful people I've ever met, and you use the word hospitality. And, it's one of at the beginning of our service, you saw that identity statement, right? That boundless hospitality. Now, we just came up with that December a year and a half ago, and we thought we were pretty creative and fresh and new here. But it turns out that's been a part. Give me just 1 second. Hey, friends that are having a chat in the side, in the back, could I have y'all just quiet your voices? Thank you. I appreciate that. But we thought we were unique talking about hospitality, and that was going to be one of our new efforts and initiatives. But here you're telling us that Morry's had that, and she told me the date, 1968, when she joined that.
Just a few years ago.
Very recently. So one of those verses, the one, this is the day that the Lord has made, Psalm 118 that you heard, I asked Morry to share with me some of her verses that meant something to her. She told me she prays this verse every day. She says, "Thank you, Father, for this is the day that the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it." And she told me that she did that every day before her feet hit the floor. And she's been doing this for ages. And she says, I said, "Well, why do you do that, Morry? I don't know that I automatically say a prayer before my feet hit the floor in the morning." And she said, "Because I'm still here. Because I'm still here. I don't know that there's that many of us that have that sense of just waking up and going, oh, praise God, I'm still here." Now, you work with a lot of our members and friends that are in that elderly population, the most mature of our population, shall we say?
Including me.
Well, you keep saying they age and you don't, so I'm not sure
Well, that's
exactly how
true.
that works. But what she was telling me is that as I get older, these are Morry's words, as I get older, each day is a day to be cherished.
And God has given her that joy that she welcomes every day with joy. I have to admit that I'm not like that a lot of the times, but Morry is always this way. And I'm grateful I'm her friend because that helps me. That helps me.
Gives a different perspective. Morry, I won't give too much information, but had a trip to the hospital. This is maybe a year ago or so, and I went to visit. And Nancy, you were there too. We went to visit in the hospital, and she was smiling and laughing in her hospital bed. And I go, "Well, aren't you a little bit worried? Aren't you a little bit scared? Aren't you a little bit nervous? I mean, it's okay to be upset. It's okay to feel, to cry, to be mad." And she said, "Oh yeah, I feel all those things." I said, but you're laughing and smiling." She says, "Yeah." That laugh she has. You just heard a little bit of it. God's still good. I'm still here. And it just reminds me to be so grateful for these things. And I'm going to edit your story a little bit based on what Morry told me over the phone. That when they came here in 1968, her and Aaron was her husband's name, right?
Aaron.
Aaron.
Yes.
I never got to meet Aaron. When they came here in 1968, they did, in fact, attempt to go to the local black church. Because being people of African American descent, they thought, that we should go check that out. And said, it just didn't feel like home. And then they came to First Presbyterian because of a realtor mentioned it, I guess. And that's when they came in and just immediately went, oh.
I do remember that part, yes.
Yeah. And I asked Morry, I said, so this is 1968. you all probably aware to some degree, 1964 is a date associated with a lot of the civil rights movement. There's a lot of division in the country over race. There had been various marches and riots and all kinds of things that were taking place at this time period. And I said, well, Morry, did you feel other being a black woman walking into this church that was predominantly filled with white folks? She said, I really didn't. I really didn't. And then she proceeded to be able to name several other people that were of various descents. Aurora Villafort, and she was from the Philippines, right?
Philippines.
Yes, and she mentioned some other names. She said there was a couple who was from India.
Yes.
And, she said this church has always wanted to be and attempted to be welcoming to diverse people. So again, back to our statement we came up with about a year and a half, where we're saying, oh, we're this fresh new church now. Look at us. We're going to be boundless hospitality. We're going to be intentionally inclusive community. Turns out this church has long roots of those things.
You know, I was thinking, Morry and I went up to Grand Rapids, Michigan, a few years ago because we had a worship renewal grant given out by the Lilly Foundation. Morry and I went up at the beginning of the year, and then Morry went up, and I went up at the end of that year. And as part of this, they give grants out all over the country. It's wonderful. It's life-changing. And I remember saying that being at First Presbyterian Church and all that we had been through up to that time, that probably was not what we intended. But God had other plans for First Pres and for the life of our congregation.
Yeah.
And fortunately, we accepted that. And we went with what God was planning. We did not know what it was or who would be involved. But through God's grace, we became that congregation as we are today. Beach Street Church, FPC, Daytona.
Yeah. I think it's so lovely. I think that's one of the gifts that's offered to us by being an intergenerational community. And there are more generations alive in the world today than ever before in history because people are living longer. So now we have this great opportunity, if we'll take it, to listen to the voices of people who've been around for a minute longer than me. Just like a little bit longer.
A little bit.
Nancy was at my birth, y'all.
Yeah. I'm thinking about the two Kenyan families that we welcomed into our church and our whole congregation. They were an integral part of First Pres.
And then the Hungarian folks.
And the Hungarians. How could I forget the Hungarians? Yes, God had a plan. And he sent Bob Gamble to Atlanta and met Emmy Osterlosh. And she came down as our intern and then became our associate pastor, along with a whole fleet of Hungarian people. And they now have their own church with Emmy as their pastor. And it just opened our world. It opened our world.
I asked Morry what she thought about some of the diversity we've been intentionally attempting to engage, wanting to be welcoming to all people, to anybody who walks in this door, that they would feel loved and welcomed like she did. And it was just so lovely to hear, one, that's been a tradition of this church, at least since 1968, but I'll venture a guess before that. This church was founded in 1923.
I was not there.
Just to be clear, Nancy was not there. And I said, well, what do you think? Because she watches every Sunday. She sees y'all, so make sure you wave at the camera when you walk by next time. I said, well, what do you think about this community that we have now? And she says, well, it is different, but in such a good way. She says, you're even more inclusive. You're even more engaging, trying to gather in more and different people and honoring that each is a child of God. And I just think that's such a gift. You know, sometimes I think we think all of our problems are brand new, or all of our challenges are brand new, or terminally unique.
And as we all know from personal experience, change is hard.
Yeah.
We are human and change is hard.
Yeah.
But I was thinking over this week that, we know that Jesus was fully God and is fully God. But we forget that he is also fully human.
Mm.
So he went through lots of changes in his life, and he did not know in advance, and I really believe that. He did not, even though he was in God's will, he didn't know each step, but he trusted.
Well, if we know everything, there's no space for faith.
Well, that's true.
So, I mean, and I was talking to Morry, too, about some of the challenges we experience because we don't have a consistent facility anymore. Now, I mean, these are gifts, too, right? Like, we no longer, that some of you know that's been around the church a while, we used to spend quite a bit of time talking about broken ACs. We used to spend quite a bit of time talking about roofs. Oh, my gosh, the amount of time we spent talking about roofs. Y'all remember how much time we spent? Oh, my gosh.
And the type of roof.
Oh boy, and the expense of the roof, and what to do about and fuse boxes. You know, my first tour of this church, back when it was across the way and we had a 36,000 square foot building, I got a tour of the fuse boxes. Because my friends, there was about 15 of them, and which ones needed to be on and which ones needed to be off. But there were also gifts in having a space that came together. Morry recounted that she would regularly, every week, she would come and meet with a group of predominantly ladies and fold bulletins.
Absolutely. We couldn't have done it without her.
And we think, oh, isn't it nice to not have that task? Whew, we don't have to fold bulletins anymore. We put it up on the screen, and we have our printouts that Mariah Proctor brings up for us. And but what we forget is that those leaky roofs and those bulletin folding opportunities and those 15 fuse boxes weren't the reason. They were the reason we came together, but they weren't because the relationship was the reason we came together.
Absolutely. That's how we formed relationships that still are there, that still last. Some of those people have died, but you still remember those relationships.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the things we're learning as a church without a building that's ours, is that we're going to have to make intentional efforts and commitments to build those relationships because we don't have the annoying leaky roof that just forces us to get together. You know what I mean?
We have other annoying things, though.
Do we that force us to get together? Well, let's try to have not as many of those, maybe, but let's make the intention to get together. No, Nancy, go sit down. No, I'm just kidding. I love that you said that. So it's about making the intentional effort to make. And so now what that's requiring of us is to put the emphasis on relationship instead of putting the emphasis on facility or problem or issue that draws us together, and then the relationship forms around that.
And enjoy the change, because otherwise we're stagnant. I mean, life is all about change.
I think you can tell us that, and people like Morry can tell us that better than others. You know, our changes we're going through, whether it's in our world or in politics or in our health or whatever it is, feel so drastic.
And hard.
And it's not because they're not. I'm not diminishing the real challenges and hardships of our lives, our world, our church, our community. They're real. And when you have a few decades behind you, I'm not going to say how many. You want to say how many?
80.
80, not decades. She has 80 years, y'all. She's not Melchizedek. That was a joke for the biblical scholars in the room. I didn't say centuries. I said decades. 80 years. But with 80 years of knowing or experiencing the challenge and the good and the bad and the hardship, I think it gives you a little perspective that maybe some of the rest of us don't have as we walk toward challenges, issues, and problems.
And you have to be thankful that This was the day that the Lord has made, and you're still here. That really in itself
Yeah.
is perfect.
Isn't that enough?
Yes. And as Morry knows.
Yeah, and Morry said to me, she said, I don't think younger people don't think about the end, which means, these are her words, that the days don't mean as much because you think you have so many of them.
And
When
you're so busy when you're younger.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's increasing sort of societally, that there's just intense stimulus all the time. That's just such a distraction. So much like we're having to shift from this idea that the challenges of a facility are going to naturally bring us together and we'll build relationship around that, I think we're also, in the past, we've naturally had these spaces of quiet between things. The time it took you to walk from point A to point B, the time it took a letter to mail, the time it took even for the phone to ring and someone to call you back or to get a busy signal. Y'all remember busy signals? Like that was a thing, and you had to wait. Or the time you spent waiting by the phone for the boy to call. Whatever it was, we had these naturally built-in times of waiting, and those don't exist anymore because everything is instant. Instant news, instant communication, a text message, an email, everything is instant. So we have to build in those times to, quote another verse, to be still.
And a lot of times, like the song said, it's good for us to wait. We're supposed to wait from time to time because only in that period can God work in us and in a situation. We have to have patience, and that's hard.
Yeah. Morry talked a lot about the sense of community that she felt, the relationships. I know I've heard in this group the word family from folks who have been part of this church for a long time. I think as a culture, we've forgotten how to be community and how to be family. And it's like we only address each other when there's an issue. That's sad.
For myself, this church is my extended family, and I'm grateful for you.
Mm-hmm. And Morry talked about when her husband Aaron died. She said, and I stayed because people like Jenny Long and people like Nancy Gard and people, other friendships that she had made along the way gave her support to move through a challenging moment, a challenging time in her life. And as we become more and more individualized in our little cells of our lives with our little phones in front of us, and this is all I need. I can get my food, I can get my groceries, I can communicate with other humans. What are we losing?
We're losing each other.
Oh, girl. That's unintentionally, we are sacrificing each other for convenience, for speed, for response, for efficiency, for productivity.
That's one of the reasons it's sometimes good to wait.
Yeah. I just want to see if here, so a little shout out to Jenny Long. She was a longtime member of our church along with Hart Long, and she died was it this year? Just this year?
No.
Last year?
Yeah, year
Has it
ago.
already been a year?
In her mid-90s.
In her mid-90s. But a lot of folks that have been part of this church for a long time went to her funeral and talked about how it felt like a reunion. And what she said about Jenny, and I want to share it with you because this is the kind of person I want to be, and maybe it'll ring to you as the kind of person you want to be. Jenny was the glue. Jenny was the first person that greeted her. Jenny was the person that asked how you're doing. Jenny gave her a phone call. Over and over and over again, Jenny would draw people together and would be the glue. Now, was Jenny the pastor?
Heavens no.
Did she have special status and rank? Was she a paid staff member?
No. I will tell you that Jenny and Morry our prayer warriors.
Yeah.
She was known for that, as is Morry. And I strive to be like that also.
Morry shared with me that one of the things that really moved her about her relationship with Jenny, and she also said this about you. She said, Jenny introduced me as her sister.
Morry introduces me as her sister. And we are sisters in Christ, and much, much more.
And she had a line about that too, and she said the reason we can say that, we don't have to look alike, we don't have to think all the same things. You and she, I know, have a number of things that you don't agree about, and that's okay, because what she says is that your blood relatives because of the blood of Christ. And so she can still call you sister.
Gosh, life would be so boring if we all thought the same. And we don't. So life is bountiful.
And she highlighted the idea that if we exclude someone, if we're going to make the active choice to exclude a person who's a child of God, because all of us are, she says, who's to say it shouldn't be me that's excluded? If we're going to start making divides between us and say this person's out and this person's in, how do you know you're on the right side of that divide? And then again, she brought me back to the idea that we have to remember that God created all of us, and God doesn't have favorites.
We were created in God's image. Let's not forget that.
Yep. So I want to leave us just with this idea to be still. Not just to be still, but to be still and know who God is. And I'm just going to invite us into a little prayer exercise that Morry and I talked about this past week. So I want you just to kind of get comfortable if you can. Maybe your feet get on the floor. Maybe you move your shoulders a little bit and straighten your back and let your gaze get soft. You don't need to see anything for this. And just take a slow, deep breath. And be. And be still. And be still and know. Be still and know that I am. Be still and know that I am God. Let it be so. Amen. Thank you for being our representative of our homebound community. Thank you, Morry, for sharing your story. And I will invite up our musical folks here. This is for you, Morry.